Morning. We're still just in chapter 1 of part 4, volume 2, page 607. It is a good thing to think in prison, but it is not bad in camp either, because, and this is the main thing, there are no meetings. For 10 years, you are free from all kinds of meetings. Is that not mountain air? While they openly claim your labor and your body to the point of exhaustion and even death, the camp keepers do not encroach at all on your thoughts. They do not try to screw down your brains and to fasten them in place. And this results in a sensation of freedom of much greater magnitude than the freedom of one's feet to run along on the level. No one tries to persuade you to apply for party membership. No one comes around to squeeze membership dues out of you in voluntary societies. There is no trade union, the same kind of protector of your interests as an official lawyer before a tribunal. And there are no production meetings. You cannot be elected to any position. You cannot be appointed some kind of delegate. And the really important thing is that they cannot compel you to be a propagandist, nor to listen to propaganda, nor, when someone jerks the string, to shout, "We demand, we will not permit," nor will they ever drag you off to the electoral precinct to vote freely and secretly for a single candidate. No one requires any socialist undertakings of you, nor self-criticism of your mistakes, nor articles in the wall newspaper, nor an interview with the provincial correspondent. A free head. Now, is that not an advantage of life in the archipelago? And there is one more freedom. No one can deprive you of your family and property. You have already been deprived of them. What does not exist, not even God can take away. And this is a basic freedom. It is good to think about in imprisonment. And the most insignificant cause gives you a push in the direction of extended and important thoughts. Once in a long, long while, once in 3 years maybe, they brought a movie to camp. The film turned out to be the cheapest kind of sports comedy. The first glove. It was a bore, but from the screen they kept drumming into the audience the moral of the film. On the screen they kept laughing. In the hall the audiences kept laughing too, and blinking as you came out into the sunlit camp yard. You kept thinking about this phrase, and during the evening you kept thinking about it on your bunk. And Monday morning, out in lineup, and you could keep thinking about it as long as you wanted. And where else could you have concentrated on it like that? A slow clarity descended into your brain. The result is what counts, and the result is not in your favor. This was no joke. This was an infectious thought. It has long since been inculcated in our fatherland, and they keep on inculcating it over and over. The concept that only the material results count has become so much a part of us that when, for example, some Tukhachevsky, Yagoda, or Zinoviev was proclaimed a traitor who had sidled up to the enemy, people only exclaimed in a chorus of astonishment, "What more could he want?" Now that it's a high moral plane for you. Now that is a real unit of measure for you. What more could he want? Since he had a belly full of chow and 20 suits and a country home and 2 country homes, and an automobile and an airplane and fame. What more could he want? Millions of our compatriots find it unthinkable to imagine that a human being, and I'm not speaking here of this particular trio, might have been motivated by something other than material gain. To such an extent has everyone been indoctrinated with absorbed the slogan, "The result is what counts." Whence did this come to us? In the first place, from the glory of our banners and the so-called honor of our motherland. We choked, cut down, and cut up all our neighbors in our expansion. And in our fatherland, it became well established that the result is what counts. And then, from our demidogs, cabans, and subikins, they clambered up without looking behind them to see whose ears they were smashing with their jackboots. And even more firmly, it became established among a once pious and open-hearted people that the result is what counts. And then, from all kinds of socialists, and most of all from the most modern, infallible, and intolerant teaching, which consists of this one thing only: the result is what counts. And it is important to forge a fighting party, and to seize power, and to hold power, and to remove all enemies, and conquer in pig iron and steel, and to launch rockets. And though for this industry and for these rockets, it was necessary to sacrifice the way of life and the integrity of the family and the spiritual health of people and the very soul of our fields and forests and rivers, to hell with them. The result is what counts, but that is a lie. Here we have been breaking our backs for years at all-union hard labor. Here, in slow annual spirals, we have been climbing up to an understanding of life, and from this height it can all be seen so clearly. It is not the result that counts. It is not the result, but the spirit. Not what, but how. Now, not what has been attained, but at what price. And so it is with us, the prisoners. If it is the result which counts, then it is also true that one must survive at any price. And what that means is, one must become a stool pigeon, betray one's comrades, and thereby get oneself set up comfortably, and perhaps even get time off sentence. In the light of the infallible teaching, there is evidently nothing reprehensible in this. After all, if one does that, then the result will be in our favor, and the result is what counts. No one is going to argue it is pleasant to win, but not at the price of losing one's human countenance. If it is the result which counts, you must strain every nerve and sinew to avoid general work. You must bend down, be servile, act meanly, yet hang on to your position as a trustee, and by this means survive. If it is the essence that counts, then the time has come to reconcile yourself to general work, to tatters, to torn skin on the hands, to a piece of bread which is smaller and worse, and perhaps to death. But when you're alive, you drag your way along proudly with an aching back, and that is when you have ceased to be afraid of threats and are not chasing after rewards, you become the most dangerous character in an owl-like view of the bosses. Because what hold do they have on you? You even begin like carrying hand barrels with rubbish, yes, but not with stone, and discussing with your workmate how the movies influence literature. You begin to like sitting down on the empty cement mixing trough and lighting up a smoke next to your bricklaying. You are actually and simply proud of if, when the foreman passes you, he squints at your courses, checks their alignment with the rest of the wall, and says, "Did you lay that? Good line." You need that wall like you need a hole in the head. Nor do you believe it is going to bring closer the happy future of the people. But, pitiful, tattered slave that you are, you smile at this creation of your own hands. An anarchist's daughter, Yalia Venedikova, worked as a nurse in the medical section, but when she saw that what went on there was not healing, but only the business of getting fixed up in a good spot, out of stubbornness, she left and went off to general work, taking up a spade and a sledgehammer, and she said that this saved her spiritually. For a good person, even a crust is healthy food, and to an evil person, even meat brings no benefit. Now that is no doubt how it really is. But what if there's not even a crust? And so, as you have renounced that aim of surviving at any price, and gone where the calm and simple people go, then imprisonment begins to transform your former character in an astonishing way, to transform it in a direction most unexpected to you. And it would seem that in this situation, feelings of malice and the disturbance of being oppressed, aimless hate, irritability, and nervousness ought to multiply, but you yourself do not notice now. Do not notice how, with the impalpable flow of time, slavery nurtures you, the shoots of contradictory feelings. Once upon a time you were sharply intolerant. You were constantly in a rush, and you were constantly short of time. And now you have time with interest. You are surfeited with it, with its months and its years behind and ahead of you, and a beneficial calming fluid pours through your blood vessels. Patience. You are ascending. Formerly, you never forgave anyone. You judged people without mercy, and you praised people with equal lack of moderation. And now an understanding mildness has become the basis of your uncategorical judgment. You have come to realize your own weakness, and you can therefore understand the weakness of others, and be astonished at another's strength, and wish to possess it yourself. The stones rustle beneath our feet. We are ascending. With the years, armor-plated restraint covers your heart and all your skin. You do not hasten to question, and you do not hasten to answer. Your tongue has lost its flexible capacity for easy oscillation. Your eyes do not flash with gladness over good tidings, nor do they darken with grief. For you still have to verify whether that's how it's going to be, and you still have to work out what is gladness and what is grief. And now the rule of your life is this: do not rejoice when you have found. Do not weep when you have lost. Your soul, which formerly was dry, now ripens from suffering. And even if you haven't come to love your neighbors in the Christian sense, you're at least learning to love those close to you in spirit who surround you in slavery. And how many of us come to realize it is particularly in slavery that for the first time we have learned to recognize genuine friendship. And also those close to you in blood, who surrounded you in your former life, who loved you, while you played the tyrant over them. Here is a rewarding and inexhaustible direction for your thoughts. Reconsider all your previous life. Remember everything you did that was bad and shameful, and take thought. Aren't you possibly corrected now? Yes, you have been imprisoned for nothing. You have nothing to repent of before the state and its laws, but before your own conscience. But in relation to other individuals, following an operation, I am lying in the surgical ward of a camp hospital. I cannot move. I am hot and feverish, and nonetheless my thoughts do not dissolve into delirium. And I am grateful to the Dr. Boris Nikolaevich Kornfeld, who is sitting beside my cot and talking to me all evening. The light has been turned out so it will not hurt my eyes. He and I, and there is no one else in the ward. Fervently he tells me the long story of his conversion from Judaism to Christianity. This conversion was accomplished by an educated, cultivated person, one of his cellmates, some good-natured old fellow like Platon Karateyev. I am astonished at the conviction of the new convert, at the ardor of his words. We know each other very slightly, and he is not the one responsible for my treatment, but there was simply no one here with whom he could share his feelings. He was a gentle and well-mannered person. I could see nothing bad in him, nor did I know anything bad about him. However, I was on guard because Kornfeld had now been living for 2 months in a hospital barracks without going outside, because he had shut himself up in here, at his place of work, and avoided moving around camp at all. This meant he was afraid of having his throat cut. In our camp, it had recently become fashionable to cut the throats of stool pigeons. This had an effect, but who could guarantee that only stoolies were getting their throats cut? One prisoner had had his throat cut in a clear case of selling a sordid grudge, and therefore the self-imprisonment of Kornfeld in the hospital did not yet prove at all that he was a stool pigeon. It is already late. All the hospital is asleep. Kornfeld is ending his story thus, quote, "And on the whole, do you know, I have become convinced that there is no punishment that comes to us in this life on earth which is undeserved. Superficially, it can have nothing to do with what we are guilty of in actual fact, but if you go over your life with a fine-tooth comb and ponder it deeply, you will always be able to hunt down that transgression of yours for which you had received this blow." Unquote. I cannot see his face. Through the window come only the scattered reflections of the lights of the perimeter outside, and the door from the corridor gleams in a yellow electrical glow. But there is such a mystical knowledge in his voice that I shudder. These were the last words of Boris Kornfeld. Noiselessly, he went out into the nighttime corridor and into one of the nearby wards, and there lay down to sleep. Everyone slept, and there was no one with whom he could speak even one word, and I went off to sleep myself, and I was awakened in the morning by running about and tramping in the corridor. The orderlies were carrying Kornfeld's body to the operating room. He had been dealt 8 blows to the skull with a plasterer's mallet while he still slept. In our camp, it was the custom to kill immediately after rising time, when the barracks were all unlocked and open, and when no one yet had got up, when no one was stirring, and he died on the operating table without regaining consciousness. And so it happened that Kornfeld's prophetic words were his last words on earth, and directed to me, they lay upon me as an inheritance. You cannot brush off that kind of inheritance by shrugging your shoulders. But by the time I myself had matured to similar thoughts, by that time, I would have been inclined to endow his words with the significance of a universal law of life. However, one can get all tangled up that way. One would have to admit that on that basis, those who have been punished even more cruelly than with prison, those shot, burnt at the stake, were some sort of super evildoers, and yet the innocent are those who get punished most zealously of all. And what would one have to say, then, about our so evident torturers? Why does not fate punish them? Why do they prosper? And the only solution to this would be that the meaning of earthly existence lies not, as we have grown used to thinking, in prospering, but in the development of the soul. From that point of view, our torturers have been punished most horribly of all. They are turning into swine. They are departing downward from humanity. From that point of view, punishment is inflicted on those whose development holds out hope. But there was something in Kornfeld's last words that touched a sensitive chord, and that I accept quite completely for myself, and many will accept the same for themselves. In the 7th year of my imprisonment, I had gone over and re-examined my life quite enough, and had come to understand why everything had happened to me, both prison and, as an additional piece of ballast, my malignant tumor. And I would not have murmured even if all that punishment had been considered inadequate. Punishment, but whose? Well, just think about that. Whose? I lay there a long time in that recovery room from which Kornfeld had gone forth to his death, and all alone, during sleepless nights, I pondered with astonishment my own life and the turns it had taken. In accordance with my established camp custom, I set down my thoughts in rhymed verses so as to remember them all. And the most accurate thing is to cite them here, just as they came from the pillow of a hospital patient, when the hard labor camp was still shuddering outside the windows in the wake of a revolt. This is the verses. When what is that I completely scattered the good seeds, one and all. When was it that I completely scattered the good seeds, one and all? For after all, I spent my boyhood in the bright singing of thy temples. Bookish subtleties sparkled brightly, piercing my arrogant brain. The secrets of the world were in my grasp. Life's destiny, as pliable as wax, blood-seethed, and every swirl gleamed iridescently before me. Without a rumble, the building of my faith quite quietly crumbled within my heart. But passing here between being and nothingness, stumbling and clutching at the edge, I'd look up behind me with a grateful tremor upon the life that I had lived. Not with good judgment, nor with desire are its twists and turns illuminated, but with even the glow of the higher meaning, which became apparent to me only later on. And now, with measuring cup returned to me, scooping up the living water. God of the universe, I believe again, though I renounced you, you were with me. Looking back, I saw that for my whole conscious life I had not understood either myself or my strivings. What had seemed for so long to be beneficial now turned out in actuality to be fatal, and I had been striving to go in the opposite direction to that which was truly necessary to me. But just as the waves of the sea knock the inexperienced swimmer off his feet and keep tossing him back onto the shore, so also was I painfully tossed back on dry land by the blows of misfortune. And it was only because of this that I was able to travel the path which I had always really wanted to travel. It was granted me to carry away from the prison years on my bent back, which nearly broke beneath its load, this essential experience: how a human being becomes evil and how good. In the intoxication of youthful successes, I had felt myself to be infallible, and I was therefore cruel. In the surfeit of power, I was a murderer and an oppressor. In my most evil moments, I was convinced that I was doing good, and I was well supplied with systematic arguments. And it was only when I lay there, on rotting prison straw, that I sensed within myself the first stirrings of good. Gradually it was disclosed to me that the line separating good and evil passeth not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart, and through all human hearts. This line shifts inside us, it oscillates with the years, and even within hearts overwhelmed by evil, one small bridgehead of good is retained. And even in the best of all hearts, there remains an uprooted small corner of evil. Since then I have come to understand the truth of all the religions of the world. They struggle with the evil inside a human being, inside every human being. It is impossible to expel evil from the world in its entirety, but it is possible to constrict it within each person. And since that time, I have come to understand the falsehood of all the revolutions in history. They destroy only those carriers of evil contemporary with them, and also fail out of haste to discriminate the carriers of good as well, and they then take to themselves as their heritage the actual evil itself, magnified still more. The Nuremberg trials have to be regarded as one of the special achievements of the 20th century. They killed the very idea of evil, though they killed very few of the people who had been infected with it. Of course, Stalin deserves no credit here. He would have preferred to explain less and shoot more. And if by the 21st century humanity has not yet blown itself up and has not suffocated itself, perhaps it is this direction that will triumph. Yes, and if it does not triumph, then all humanity's history will have turned out to be an empty exercise in marking time, without the tiniest mite of meaning. Whither and to what end will we otherwise be moving? To beat the enemy over the head with a club, even the caveman knew that. Know thyself. There is nothing that so aids and assists the awakening of omniscience with us as insistent thoughts about one's own transgressions, errors, mistakes. After the difficult cycles of such ponderings over many years, whenever I mention the heartlessness of our high-ranking bureaucrats, the cruelty of our executioners, I remember myself in a captain's shoulder-boards and the forward march of my battery through East Prussia, enshrouded in fire, and I say, so were we any better? When people express vexation in my presence over the West's tendency to crumble, its political short-sightedness, its divisiveness, its confusion, I recall, too, were we before passing through the archipelago, more steadfast, firmer in our thoughts. And that is why I turn back to the years of my imprisonment and say, sometimes to the astonishment of those about me, bless you, prison. Lev Tolstoy was right when he dreamed of being put in prison. At a certain moment, that giant began to dry up. He actually needed prison as a drought needs a shower of rain. All the writers who wrote about prison, but who did not themselves serve time there, considered it their duty to express sympathy for prisoners and to curse prison. I have served enough time there. I nourished my soul there, and I say without hesitation, bless you, prison, for having been in my life. And from beyond the grave comes a reply, it is very well for you to say that, when you came out of it alive. Thank you for listening. Chapter 2 tomorrow. Have a good day.